So last session we discussed about working with tables, how to design and handle tables in HTML. Now after understanding and working with tables, we are going to discuss about forms in HTML now. Forms in HTML. As I already told you that this is very important for any front-end or back-end developer. Working with the forms, interacting with the forms, you need to be very perfect in this. So let's see how to use the forms and how we can work with them. What are the options for that? So many important points are there related to this. Technically, form provides an UI. UI is user interface. Form provides an user interface. Generally, form provides an user interface that allows the user to interact with the application. Allows the user to interact with the application. So technically, form is going to provide an user interface that allows the user to interact with the application. So I will show you a general technical example for that, how it actually works. Suppose, let's see here. So this is a screen that we defined here. Now here you have to observe that. So this is a font dialog I am having. So a simple font dialog I am having. When you select format font, this font dialog is present. Now what we have to do is, I will show you a small example here. See, in this actually, this is the font dialog. Yeah. In this, here we are having a small box where user can enter the font size. Generally, we technically call this as text box. So text box allows the user to input a value, and text box allows the user to read the value, modify the values and all. Below that text box, you can see this is called a list box. We call it as a list box. This is called as list box. List box allows you to scroll up and down and select any one option from the list. Now you can see here another option is there. This is called drop down. We call this as drop down list. So it will open the list when you click on that drop down and display. And of course, you know, below this OK, cancel, these are called, so technically these are called as buttons. Buttons are used for confirming the actions and all. Observe carefully, all these are present in a rectangular container, in a box. They all are present in a container, and this container is technically called as We call this container as form. So this form contains all these controls like text box, box, radios, list boxes, drop downs, buttons. We call all these as form elements. We call them as form elements. So technically, what is a form? Actually, so technically, form is a container. Technically, form is a container. So here, form is a container with collection of elements. It is a container with collection of elements like button, text box, list box, drop down, radio button, check box. What are those? You will learn about them, etc. So technically, form is a container. This container contains collection of several elements inside it. So like buttons, text box, check box, list box. Yeah, just lost connection for a while. Yes. Am I audible to everyone? Is it clear? Right? Yes, right. Okay. Yeah, let's continue. Yeah, right. So let's see. Now, technically, form is a container with collection of elements like all these buttons, text box, checkbox, and all. Now we have to learn how to design a form and how to design the elements in the form. So HTML provides form container. It provides form container. Inside that form container, you have to keep all your form elements. So buttons, text box, how to design them, we are going to learn about that. So if anyone asks technically what is a form, then we should say that form is a container. It is a container with collection of some elements. So first we will learn how to design the form. Then we will learn how to design the elements in the form. So let's see. From container that comprises of various elements. So how to design the form container? Let's see. The form container. What are the attributes and how to handle them? The form container attributes. Let's see. So to design a form like this, in order to design a form like this, we need a container. So let's go to our project. Let's create a new HTML page. I will add a new HTML page here. So let's keep the name as form demo.html. Okay. Now in this, we are designing the basic structure, doc type HTML, head, title, and form demo. In the body section, I am just keeping a form here, form. It's just a container. So you can see visually it is empty, nothing is present. So when I run this, you can see it is empty. For example, I will keep a heading. So say registered. Okay, register user. And you can see that it is empty, nothing is there. So register user heading is there. Below that, form is empty. So form is technically an empty container. For your understanding sake, what I will do is I will put a style. And inside the style, I am writing form. For form width, some 300 pixel. And form height as 300 pixel. And form have a border 2 pixel solid. And form have some padding 20 like this. You can see that the form have an appearance like this. It generally have an appearance like this, but form is just empty container like a div or a span or any paragraph or any other element. So now, what are the important attributes for the form? So let's see. Form contains some important attributes. The first important attribute, these are very regularly asked in interviews for a fresher level. So you need to know about these attributes and options for form very well. And these are very important to work in real-time environment also. That's the reason you need to know about these attributes very well. Generally, form have an ID, form have a name, and form have a class. These three things already we know. We will use later in programming. These are not required as of now. We will use them in CSS. We will use them in JavaScript like that. So every element have ID, name, and class. For example, ID, it defines a unique ID for form. And name, it defines a reference name for form. And class, it specifies a CSS class name. These things you will see while learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript combination, you will understand. We are going to learn about ID, name, and class-like options. We are going to discuss about that. So that is generally ID, name, and class. These are the three important attributes. These are basic and these are for all elements. Every element have these options. So form is also having those options. So syntactically, form have, you can write form with an ID, some FRM register, that is ID. We can have a name as a foreign register like that. So we can have a class like a form container, something like this. These are used for CSS, JavaScript. So later when you are working with CSS and JavaScript, you can use these three attributes: ID, name, and class for references. These are general. Next, very important is form have an attribute called method. This is very important. Form technically have an attribute called method. Actually, method it defines the type of action to perform. Method defines the type of action to perform. What type of action to perform? And very important is every HTML form comprises of every HTML form comprises of two actions methods. Two action methods. One is get, another one is post. There are so many other action methods that are not related to form. Later you will learn about those methods like post, put, patch, delete. Such options are present. But when you design a HTML form, usually HTML form contains two action methods. One is get, another one is post. I will explain what is the difference, and we will see what is the purpose of these methods. See, this is very important in almost every web designing interviews. You will get this question: what is difference between get and post? So when to use get, when to use post like options. It's very important. Let's see. I will explain one simple scenario. For example, in real-time development, we have actually data. Generally, we have data, and the data is present in a database. Usually, we have database. So generally, we maintain data in Oracle or MySQL or SQL Server, something like MongoDB. All these are various databases. Now we design one application. So we design our application. This is our application. This is our software application. Now from this application, we have to interact with the data present in database. Then generally for users, we provide an UI, user interface. And just now we learned that user interface is nothing but form. So it is form. Now, the purpose of this form will be for different situations. For example, a form can be designed for get. It can be designed for post. It can be designed for put. It can be designed for patch, or it can be designed for delete. Like that, so many actions are present. What is the purpose of these actions? Form uses get. By using get, form can fetch information from database. That means get is used for fetch data. Fetch data means access the data from database. That means from database, if you want to access the data and show inside the form, then form must be designed. Form must be designed for get method. Form must be designed for get method in order to fetch data from the database, to get the data from the database and show the data. So always we design a form with the get method if we are trying to fetch data from database. When we are trying to fetch data from database, then we use this get method. Form uses the post method. It uses the post method to submit data to server. So form uses the post method to submit data to method. That means from the user interface, if you want to send some data to database, then we have to use the put method. Post method. Post is used for submitting data into database. That means user enters some details. We need to send those details into the database and store in database. So detail differences I will tell you. So many points are there. As of now, basic get is used for fetching the data. Post is used for submitting the data, and put is used for modifying all details. Put is used for modifying all details. It is used for modifying all details. Put is used for modify all details. So it is used for modifying all the details. Yeah, you people, anybody turned on your cameras, please turn off them. Huh? It is disturbance for so many other people who are currently online. Huh? You please turn off your videos. Okay. Turn off your videos. Right? Yeah, good. It's lot of disturbance for others. Huh? Turn off your videos. Fine. Okay, now get method for fetching the data, post method for submitting the data, put method for modifying the data. That means if you want some changes, but put is used to modify all the details. So modifying all the details. If you want to modify only few details, then you have to design for patch. Patch is used for modifying partial details, not all details. It is used for partial modification. Patch is used for partial modification. That means we are not modifying all the details. We are modifying only few details. That is partial. And delete is for removing the data. Delete is for removing the data. If I want to remove the data from the database, then we have to design for delete method. So it is for removing the data. So we have get method for fetching, post method for submitting, put method for modifying, patch so for partial modification, and delete for removing. So whenever you are designing a form, it's very important to tell initially what is the purpose of the form. Is it for fetching? Is it for posting, or modifying, or partial modifying, or deleting? If you don't mention anything, by default, form will use get. So by default, form will use get method if you don't define the method. So when you design a form, it's important to tell the form method, whether it is get or post or put or delete. How to tell that? We have to use the attribute. So here the methods, important is here the method we can define. So HTTP method, and or you can also call as, technically experienced people call it as HTTP verb. We call as HTTP verbs. And the purpose of that verb. Purpose. What is the purpose of the verb? So generally, HTTP verbs, we have get. Get is for fetch data. And post is for submit data, submit data. And put is for modify all details, details. And patch is for modify, modify partial details, partial details. And delete is for remove, remove details. So these are the general HTTP methods. So how to configure them, how to define them? So we have to design a form, and for the form we have to write method is equal to, method is equal to some get. Capitalization doesn't matter. You can keep capital letters, small letters, just for separation visually. I'm writing in capital letters. You can write in uppercase or lowercase, anything. Form method is equal to get. Or you can write like form method is equal to post. If you don't define anything method, then by default here, so by default method is get. Default get method is get. So whenever we design a form in HTML, the form must be configured for these two actions. Initially, we have to use get or post. Put, patch, delete, you will learn later how to handle them, how do we work with them, you will learn later. So we generally call them as HTTP methods, or we call them as HTTP verbs. So here we are defining a form. So for form, we can have a lot of attributes. In that, important form attribute is method. Method can be like get, or method can be like post. So later you will learn about other methods. Initially, form is designed for get or post. Get or post. So as a developer, you have to decide according to situation whether it should be get or post or put or delete, like options. Usually it will be two options. So that means get and post. And very important now in interviews, so question asked like, so in many interviews, one frequently asked question is, can we post data on get request? On get request, can we post data on get request? Or they can ask like, can we submit data on get request? Can we submit data on get request? In many interviews, they ask this question. What do you say? What is the answer? Can we submit data on get request? Huh? What do you say? What is your answer? Can we submit data on get request? So what is the request? Get request, I told you. Get request is for fetching the data. Good, right? So, but in interviews they ask like, can we use get request for submitting the data? So the answer is actually yes. Yes, we can use get request for submitting the data, but not recommended. But not recommended. We can use get request for submitting the data, but not recommended. Then immediately the question asked is, then what is difference between get and post? Because we can submit data on get request. So if anybody asks, can I submit data on get request? Yes, you can submit data on get request, but not recommended. Then question asked is, why it is not recommended? Why I should not submit data on get request? So if it is not recommended, why they have given the facility to submit data on get request? Such questions will come. And this is very important for a fresher to understand, to work with forms. What is difference between get and post? I will show you one simple point. Means we will understand the difference between this. So what is difference between get and post? Let's see. Actually, get request. What is get is it submits data. It submits data. So it submits data to server. Okay, that's good. Get also can submit data to server. That's good. It submits data to server. But actually its main intention is fetching, but it can submit data to server. But problem is it appends data. It appends data into URL. It appends data into URL as query string. I will show you that practically. I will show you. It appends data into URL as query string. Then what is problem? The problem is, so it can be viewed by any user. It can be viewed by any user. It can be viewed by any user. So it is not safe. It is not safe. So it is easy to hack your data. It is easy to hack your data. So it is very easy to hack your data because everybody can see the data. What you are submitting, anybody can see the data. I will show you practically. I will show you that. Then you can understand. So it submits, get can submit the data. But the problem is when you submit the data, it is in the query string. When it is in the query string, anybody can view it. It's not safe. It is easy to hack. Another important point is anyone can bookmark the data, bookmark your data. That means even after you close, it will be available in bookmarks. Bookmark means nothing but favorites. Even if you close, it is available in favorites. So after closing, anybody can come back and see. Not only that, it is stored in browser history, browser logs. Browser logs are nothing but history. That means even if it is deleted from bookmark, it is present in browser history. That means you have to clean up the browser history also every time. So lot of problems are there with get when it is used to submit. Not only this. So another important problem about get is data is appended into URL. It is appended means it is added into URL. When data is added into URL, what happens is you cannot, hence you cannot submit complex data. Complex data means you cannot submit binary type data. Binary type data means like images, graphics, you cannot submit. And very important is you have limit for data. That means you can submit max 2048 characters. You can submit maximum 2048 characters. You have limit for submitting the data. So many problems are there for submitting data on get request. So that is the reason. So always use get request only for fetching. Don't use for submitting. I will show you all these problems. So technically, I will show you all these problems. So how it is handled and how it is managed, we will see that. So submitting data to server, handling manipulations with the server. So let's see the problem here. Currently, I given the form method as get. Now, just temporarily for your understanding sake, Don't worry what I am writing inside the form, just observe the concept of get method. Later you will learn how to design. Suppose I am saying some password and I said input type is equal to password. Don't worry what is this input type password and all. So I will just tell you about them later. Just observe the concept of get method. You see I have a submit button, some register. Register is the submit button. Now observe carefully. Don't worry about what I have written inside the form. Just concentrate on this get. See what happens now. I will open this in the browser. Okay. And here, so it is asking password and we have a register button. Just temporarily, I will remove the form borders and also that it is more simplified for you. Now you can see this is the general form we are having. So we have a form and inside that we have password and all these details configured and specified here. Now we have these options specified here. Now when you are running this, so this is the form and observe very carefully. Observe carefully in the URL, you can see we have the page name. In the URL, we are having the page name formdemo.html. Currently, form method is get method. Okay. In the get method, I am typing here password. So password, I defined some password. And after typing the password, when I click register, the data is submitted. So you can see the data is submitted. Once data is submitted, observe the data is present in the URL. That means the password I typed is added into the URL. The data is submitted into the URL. So anyone can view this data. It's not safe. It's not safe. Anyone can see the data. Anyone can even bookmark this data. That means we can add this into favorites. Not only that, this data is stored in browser history also, that URL. So that means anyone can go to browser history and can see that data again. So you have to clean up from history, you have to clean up from the URL. It's difficult. And if any data is passed in URL, you know that URL supports only general characters. It will not support images or graphics like type of data. That means you cannot submit complex data. And there is limit for this URL. So maximum that URL supports 2048 characters. So you cannot submit data more than that. So these are all the limits for submitting data on GET request. So if anybody asks, when I submit on GET request, where the data will be, then you have to say that when you submit on GET request, the data will be in query string. The data will be in query string. So it is present in the query string. It is in the URL. So it is present in the query string. It is in the URL. So these are all the problems of submitting data on GET request. So that is the reason. So better use post for submitting data. What is post? I will tell you here. So one is post submits data to server, submits data to server. What is advantage is, so data is submitted as form body. So it is not appended into URL. It is not appended into URL. So it is safe. So it is hard to hack your data. So it is not in browser history. It will not be stored in browser history. So it's very good. And another important here is, so it cannot be bookmarked. That's very good. And very important, there is no limit for data. You can submit any amount of data, any amount of data. For that, we can set limits later with our JavaScript and others. I will tell you later when you learn JavaScript and all. Why? Because generally, suppose when you are uploading a photo or uploading a resume, then people set a limit for that. They will say that you cannot upload more than 2 MB, you cannot upload more than 4 KB, like that. So that limits you can do with JavaScript later. Initially, it will not allow to handle this. Another important point is you can submit any complex data. You can submit any complex data. That means even binary type data, binary type data also you can submit. So that is the reason. So always use post for submitting. For example, you see now, so you can see in the current example, when I entered the password and submitted, you can see the data is in the query string. Observe carefully here. I will go to inspect. In the inspect, I will go to network. In the network, once open this page. So, and you can see the form demo.html requested. After that, I am typing some password. So I am typing some password and click on register button. It's submitted. And this is submitted. You can see here, I selected form demo.html. You see, so in the URL here, you can observe, you can see the request method is get. And you can see clearly the requested data is in the URL. You can see question mark and password, and that information is present. Generally, we call that part as, that means we call that part as query string. So it is equal to some ABC 1, 2, 3. So this part is called query string. It is present in the query string. Data is in the query string. So it's not safe. It's easy to hack. It exposes your data. There is limit for data. These are all the problems. Now see the point here. I will change this now. I will change this method. I will change this to post. But very important is when you change the method to post, you have to tell into which server side page you have to post. That means there must be a server side technology which can collect your data and it can post the data. That means there must be a server side technology for that. So you must have a server side technology. That server side technology will collect the data and it will use that data. Currently, we don't have any server side technology. So practically, you cannot implement that. Just you can understand. So then when you use post, you can see that it shows some error. I will refresh this page one more time. Okay, now I am entering the password here. And after entering the password and I click on register button, then the form is submitted, but it is showing the page is not working. That is reasonable. Why? Because when you submit, then you on post, you have to tell which server side technology should catch it and where to post you have to tell. Currently, we don't have any server side technology. Later, when we learn server side technology, we can post to that server side like JSP, PHP, Node.js, .NET. We can post into that. But observe carefully, data is posted, but it is not in the URL. Data is posted, but it is not in the URL. So data is present in form body. You can see the form demo. So this is on post method. And currently it is saying that method not allowed. Why? Because there is no server side technology which can collect your data and use it. For that, you have to use some server side technology, some server side pages and configure them. As of now, you don't need to worry about that. Just the important point is, so we have allowed the data to be submitted in a safer way. So it is more safer than the GET request because it can handle all these issues. So now as a developer, you should know so when to use GET and when to use POST. So always use get method for fetching data, and always use post method for submitting data. So can we submit data on get request? Yes, but it is not recommended. Now tell me one answer. Now the question for you, already I told you these points. Now you need to understand. So the frequently asked question, where data is present, so when it is submitted on get request, what do you say? Where data is present when it is submitted on get request? What is your answer? Where data is present when it is submitted on get request? Where data is present when it is submitted on get request? So you should not say URL or database or server. You should say data is in query string. Where data is present when you submitted on get request? So data is present in query string. Initially data is present in query string. That's very important. Now where data is present when it is submitted in post request? Where data is present when it is submitted on post request? When it is submitted on post request. Very good. So it is, you should say that, so it is present in form body. You should say form body. Understood? You should say form body. So data is present in form body, right? So these two are very important. Query string, form body. Data will be in query string when it is on get request. Data will be in form body when it is on post request. So we need to know that point. So very important. So that is get and post. So form body, right? Now, so this is one option. So that is form method post. Another important attribute for the form, these all topic under this concept only, method. Another important attribute for form. So form is having an attribute called action. Actually, action, it indicates the target page. It indicates the target page where to submit the data. It indicates the target page where to submit the data. That's very important. So action indicates where to submit the data. Usually it refers to server side pages like JSP, like PHP, like ASP, like ASPX, so etc. like this. Later you will learn about those server side pages and all. That means I already told you, when you design on post, you have to tell where to post. Server side, there will be a page which can collect and which can use your page. So later you are going to understand that complete scenario, not now. As of now, just you have to understand this point. So see, I said post. Where to post? We have to tell action. Action indicates. So where to submit this information? So usually it will be some server side page, some like demo.jsp, demo.php, like demo.asp, demo.aspx, something server side pages, some page. So later you are going to learn about them. As of now, we don't have any server-side pages. We don't have any server-side technologies. So action cannot be defined. Just I'm roughly showing you how it is configured actually. Later, when you have a server-side technology, you can post into that, and that server-side technology will collect the information and it will use that information. Later, you can do that. So how to handle? So syntactically, you have to write like this. So syntactically, action indicates where to submit that information. So we have a form method is equal to post, and form action indicates where to post. Some register.php, something like this. That's how we need to design the form action. So method and action, these two are important. When you are designing the form for fetching information, always use form method as get, and you don't need any action. You need action only when you are submitting on post. When you are submitting on post, you have to tell where to post the data and configure it. That's important. So this is form related another important attribute, action. Now in HTML5, a new attribute introduced for form. That attribute is no validate. No validate is very important. No validate is nothing but, so what is this no validate? Actually, HTML5, here few points you have to know. So HTML5 introduced form validations. Form validations. Form validations are good. So actually, form validation verifies the details, verifies the details before submitting. Form validation verifies the details before submitting. So it allows submitting only when all fields are valid and having proper data. That is very good. Now no validate is used to ignore validation. That means it will bypass the validations. If validation is very good, why they have given an option for bypassing the validation? If validation is good and it is very important, then why they have given an option for ignoring validation? I will tell you the problem here. See, I will show you a small point here. Suppose, so we are asking for form methods and all. I will remove here. Yeah. By default, form method will be get. By default, form method, or I will give as get method. And you see here, I'm using some general option, like suppose I am writing like general. So user name, okay. Input type I given as text. So these we will learn, elements we will learn later. Name as a username, and we have a button called some register. And you see here, actually, for this text box, currently, you can observe that currently when I open this form, when I access this form currently, you can see without entering name, if I click register, then it is submitting. It is submitting empty. You see, it is submitting empty. Username is empty. It's not allowing to submit any value. It's submitting empty. Actually, we should not allow to submit empty. If we should not allow to submit empty, HTML5 earlier, before HTML5, we have to write some logic in JavaScript. In HTML5, they have introduced a new concept. What I can do is, Simply, I can use an attribute called required. These I will tell you how to use these attributes and all. I will discuss about that. Currently, observe this point. When I use required, observe carefully. Without entering the name, without entering the username, when I click register button, it will pop up a message. Please fill out this field. This is validation. This is very good. That means it is not allowing to submit until or unless there is some value inside it. That is very good. It reduces burden on server. That means you submitted some empty, then it goes to database and database rejects it. Database says that you can't submit empty. Then again server will tell you that please put some value. So you can reduce the burden on server by verifying these details in HTML itself. Very good. But you see option here. When I use no validate, for form, we can use an option no validate. When I use no validate, these type of validations are ignored. It will ignore that validation. See, the validation is required. The validation is required. And it is having required. But without entering name, if I submit now, it is submitting. It is submitting because we have used no validate. No validate indicates that don't validate. If validation is good, why you are saying don't validate? What is the purpose of this? Because generally validation is very good and very important also. Then why they have given an option for ignoring validation? They have given an option for ignoring validation. See, if I don't use that no validate, it will validate. Observe. So I give that now and I will try to submit now without entering name. It's not allowing. I entered some name, then click register. It is allowing now. With name, it is allowing. Without name, if I try to submit, it's not allowing. It's not allowing. So if I use no validate, you can see that it is allowing to submit even there is a required attribute. Why this facility they have given? Because HTML have given validations. HTML have given validations. Very good. But some of HTML validations are not suitable to everyone. HTML have given validations. That is very good. HTML given validations. That's very good. But some of HTML validations are not suitable to everyone. That is the reason that validation is not good for everyone. For example, I will tell you why validation is not good for everyone, not suitable for everyone. For example, see, instead of username, I am asking email, your email. Okay. To enter email, I am giving as input type is equal to some email. So email is a validation. Observe carefully here. So when I select this, I will refresh this now. And you see now here, observe here, this time we are asking enter your email. And I am entering some John. So, and click on register, click on register. It is verifying email and it says that please include at the net. It is verifying email and saying that please include at the net because email should have at the net. That's very good. That means this email is verifying whether you entered a proper email or not. But observe carefully. I entered at the net some H. Is it a valid email? What do you say? Is it a valid email? Is it a valid email format? Is it having a valid email or is it having a valid email format? It's not a valid email. Okay. But observe carefully when I click on register, you can see it is submitting. When I click on register, it is submitting. Observe, I will give a name here, name as email. Okay. Name as email. Okay. Now you see now here, I am typing some David. Okay, David. And I click on register. It says invalid. That's very good. But I said David.h and click on register. It is submitting. That means email validation is given, but that email format is not according to our requirement. According to our requirement, it should have some at gmail.com or yahoo.com like that. That means it is allowing even you type a single character. It is allowing even you type a single character after at the net and register, it is allowing. That means email validation is present, but that email validation is not according to our requirement. Then what we have to do as a developer, we have to suppress this validation and use our own validation. That means we have to disable the validations of HTML and write validation by ourselves manually with the help of JavaScript or jQuery like that. So every HTML validation is not good and it is not according to your requirements. In that case, we have to ignore the validations and we have to write the validations by our own. To handle this. So we need to suppress the validations. How to suppress the validations? By using no validate. So no validate is used to ignore validation. Observe now here in the form, what I will do is I will give the form no validate. If I give no validate, then it will not verify your email. That means you say Sam, then I click on register. It is allowing to submit. But you have to manually write it by using your JavaScript. You have to manually write and you have to manually verify that this email is not in a correct format. According to your requirements, you have to write. You cannot depend on HTML validation. Like that, HTML has several validations. For example, see, suppose I'm giving your phone, your mobile, and I said input type as Dell. Dell is used for telephone number. And here I said, so phone, okay. Now we are asking the user to enter his telephone number. Now the question here is, what is the format of telephone number? Suppose I given 9876543210 and click on register. So it is allowing. I given as suppose, so 9876543210 and click on register. It is allowing. 9 digits it is allowing, 10 digits it is allowing. So 6 digits it is allowing, 4 digits it is allowing. Like that, it is allowing some digits. It should not allow like that. Currently, if I entered some text and click on register, it is allowing that also. That means this is not good. Already I told you that browser dependency issues will be there. HTML provides some options which are not suitable for you. See, if I remove no validate, that means now it will validate. I will enter the phone number. Observe carefully. So I am entering the phone number 9876543210 and I click 10 digit number. I click register. It is submitting. Suppose I said some 4-5 digits number, register. It is also submitting. Even I don't give no validate, it is submitting, but actually it is for telephone. But which telephone? So many problems are there. That is the reason these are not suitable. So we have to write our own validations. That's the reason several HTML validations, we have to ignore them and we write the validations manually. To ignore the validations, we have to use no validate. That means for the form, we have to define no validate. No validate indicates that it will not allow the validations to work. So remember, it will not allow only HTML validations. So this will suppress, or you can say this will bypass only HTML validations. If you write your own validations with JavaScript and jQuery, they are going to work. It will suppress only HTML validations. That is no validate. So while working with the forms, these are all important attributes for the forms. So the major differences between get and post, form method, form action, and form no validate. This is only you have to understand about the form element, how to design the form, how do we configure the form. So once you know about this, now you need to understand about form elements. Form elements. That means how to design elements inside the form. Elements inside the form, like how we can design a text box, how you can design a password box, how you can design a checkbox, how you can design a radio button. What is the purpose of it? How to design a drop down list. Drop down list. We have a list box. We have a list box. So we have text area. We have text area. So we have like meters, meter control. We have like progress control, and we have like buttons. So many types of elements are present. Now, as a developer, you just learned only what is form. Now you have to learn how to design the elements inside the form, how we can configure the elements inside the form and work with the elements inside the form. That we will see in our next session. In tomorrow's session, we will discuss about that. Okay. So in tomorrow's session, we will learn how to design the elements inside the form, text box, passwords, check boxes, and all. With that, we can create some real world example. So we will take a website example, and according to that website, we will design the forms, and we will create one real world example that we will see after learning about these elements. So in tomorrow's session, we will discuss about how to design these elements. Okay. All these notes is already in the classroom. All the notes is already in the classroom. You can get it from the classroom. Okay. Tomorrow we will continue with form elements.